And just a heads up to the folks who are coming in, this meeting is both being recorded and the stream to YouTube is live right now.
Hey, Bill, good afternoon. Michelle?
Hello, how you doing, Mike? How's your weather?
Hey, is that green grass behind you in the window? I haven't seen that for a while.
Yeah, and that's water, not hail or snow, so we're good.
Great. John, Michael?
Hello, Mike.
Hey, Aaron. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello. You sound like Winnie the Pooh.
On this blustery day.
It's a wet one over here. All the snow is melting, but it can't hit the drains because they're all covered in ice. So there's lakes all over the place in my neighborhood anyway.
Fun.
My daughter in Corvallis was finally able to get to her car parking lot. And then, hey, Cheryl. And then to go out to the grocery store today, since Saturday after her work on Saturday today was the first day she could get out of her parking lot in Corvallis.
Wow. What fun this winter is already.
Yeah, the university's closed down there again today, and my son's in the dorm. He says they're all getting bored.
Yep.
That could be trouble in a dorm.
That leads to trouble.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know that from experience.
Yeah, I miss those days.
Oh, welcome, Don. Thanks for coming. This is my supervisor, Don Everingham. He's the Northwest Oregon Area Director and is joining us today. Thanks, Don.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.
There's Caroline.
Hi, everyone.
Looks like everybody's at home today. At least as far as I can tell, we're all weathering the weather.
Yes, it's crazy in my neck of the woods. Still very icy.
We're good on the coast for once.
Fred, I did hear you had quite a crazy couple weeks of weather.
Oh man, it was all over the place. This last weekend, just ice everywhere. Just like you guys have now. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, hi, you guys.
Commissioner Willie.
You look mighty cozy there, Bill.
Yeah, this retirement thing is fun.
I can't wait. Oh, everybody's weather good?
It is here on the coast.
Yeah. A couple of your places are starting, well, South Coast, having some flooding and some other little issues now, but
Have you all had damage, Lisa, to buildings?
I think we're Thompson's Mill looks a little a little saturated.
Yeah,
I
have to think the lower level of Thompson's Mill is probably getting damaged right now.
Yeah, that one's probably eating up some water. But overall not bad. I think we only had 9 that were really impacted. And is I-84 open back up, JR?
It's
immigrant?
opened and closed and opened and closed. I think it's switched back and forth. I think it currently is open, but then it's flipped a lot over the last several days.
Yeah, so it's just been fun to watch it all pop up. We go from snow to ice to floods. Slides will be next. And then we'll be to fire.
Or big ocean waves.
Yeah, king tides.
I haven't updated my bingo card yet this year, so don't give me any ideas.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think, do we have everybody we need? Sorry for all the confusion earlier, but I think we're good now. And thanks everybody for pivoting, because it would not have worked to get most of us together in person today. So thank you for that, Caroline. Oh, there's Dave. And if somebody can help me figure out if we have enough for a quorum that we can actually go ahead and get started. I see Aaron, Bill, Jerry. I think we're close.
Yeah, I think we're there,
Have
Lisa.
everybody.
Okay, awesome. All right, you guys. Well, welcome to our STIA public meeting. And sorry we're not in person. I appreciate everybody's flexibility and pivoting and getting back online virtually. And sorry about the exec conversation. Just want to make sure folks know that we couldn't meet an executive session because we hadn't publicly really noticed that. And so if we have time today, at the end of this meeting, we can go into public session to talk about, or executive session to talk about a couple of things, but we'll get there and see what time looks like at the end. So our goals for today's meeting are to go over the Salmonberry Trail Foundation project updates. We're going to review our current insurance policy. We're going to review and adopt, hopefully, the proposed minimal trail standard and liability signage standards, and then form a work group to study and make recommendations around the continuation of the 2025 STIA intergovernmental agreement. We just want to make sure we're looking at to make sure we have the right governance structure in place for where we want to go, not where we've been. It's worked okay for where we've been, but we're growing up rather rapidly here. We want to make sure that we're in a good spot. And then we'll review quarterly, the quarterly dates for 2024 and make sure those are going to work. So with that, I want to welcome you guys, and I want to give a very special thanks. Caroline, I don't know if all these folks are with us, but if you are listening out there, I just want to make sure that we have a round of applause and big warm hearts to Wheeler City Council President Karen Matthews, City Manager Pax Broader, am I saying that right? Okay, who helped with applying for a grant for the Salmonberry Trailer in Wheeler. So that is huge. Every little bit of ounce of energy and effort helps. So I just want a huge thank you. And then the following neighbors helped the foundation craft its Good Neighbor program, which is also a really big deal. So I want to thank Stub Stewart State Park, yay, Stub Stewart, Rice's Horses, yay. You guys are listening, and Manning Bible Church and the City of Banks. So just thank you for being strong partners, and every little bit of help gets us closer and closer to getting this trail to being a reality. So just wanted to offer a round of thanks. Caroline, is there anything else before we jump into agenda that you and I didn't discuss that needs to be?
No, I think I see that there are a couple of new faces here on the call that it's super exciting to have some new people. So maybe we could have them introduce themselves.
Absolutely. So sorry, guys, for the record, I'm Lisa Sumption. I chair the Salmonberry Trail Interagency. I'm also your very proud State Parks Director and your SHPO. So I will stop there. So Michelle, you want to go?
Hello there. I'm Michelle Bradley. I'm the general manager here at the Port of Tillamook Bay.
Awesome. Michael, you're next.
Yeah, Michael Nunzert. I'm on the Salmonberry Trail Foundation board and chairman of the Planning and Construction Committee for that organization.
Awesome. Thank you. Mike.
Good afternoon, Mike Cafaretta. I'm the district forester for the Oregon Department of Forestry in Forest Grove and sitting in for Cal Mukamoto today.
Nice to see you. Bill.
Bill Bartline, Port of Tillamook Bay Commissioner, representing them on the board.
Thank you. Commissioner Scar.
Erin Scar, Tillamook County Commissioner. I am also a board member on the Salmonberry Trail Foundation.
Cheryl. Trying to find the unmute on Zoom versus Teams as always.
Well, and I was having audio issues earlier, so I couldn't say anything to anyone. So hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl. I'm your insurance agent. I'm at Hudson Insurance here in Tillamook.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Don.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Vogler. I'm on the board of the Salmonberry Trail Foundation.
Hi, John. Okay, Don.
Yeah, good afternoon, all. Don Everingham, Oregon Department of Forestry, Northwest Oregon Area Director. Have been meeting with Mike Caffaretta and Cal as well, fairly new in this role and hoping to get up to speed on the project. Thanks.
Great, nice to meet you. Commissioner Wiley.
Hi, Jerry Willie, Washington County Commissioner, and also a board member of the Salmonberry Trail Foundation.
Good to see you. Caroline. You're muted.
There we go. Hi, Caroline Fitchett. I'm the director of the Salmonberry Trail. It's great to see everybody.
Uh-oh, people moved on me. JR, you're next.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. J.R. Collier, Deputy Director for Oregon State Park for Field Operations.
Great, thank you. Amelia, good to see you.
Hi everyone, Amelia Porterfield. I'm the Regional Solutions Director for Governor Kotek. I also have been serving as the Metro Regional Coordinator, and so being present for the Metro region. Also Nate Stice, who's the coordinator for North Coast, is out this week, so I'm kind of filling in all regional solutions things at the moment. And I'm apologizing, I have to leave just after 2 because we are interviewing for a full-time Metro Regional Coordinator, so you'll have somebody who's a bit more present going forward, but apologies, I have to jump a little early. Nice to meet you.
Awesome, thanks for being with us. We're super excited to get that person where we're like, wait a minute, when Jennifer left, like, who is it? And we're like, oh wait, there is no one. So thank you. If you need help from us, let us know. Dave, I see you there.
Happy damp January to everyone. I'm Dave Perillo. I'm President and CEO of Explore Tualatin Valley. So we are the formerly Washington County Visitors Association, the tourism promotion agency in Washington County.
Awesome, good to see you, Dave. Gavin.
Hi everyone, I'm Gavin Mahaley. I'm on the Salmonberry Trail Foundation staff. I am the Communications and Development Director, and it's great to be here and see everyone.
Awesome, nice to see you. Sorry, it's not in person. Meta, did I say that right?
It's Maida, and nice to meet everybody. I am the new staff assistant for Commissioner Willie. So I met some of you the other day or yesterday, and looking forward to joining in this work.
Excellent, nice to meet you. Welcome. And Michelle. Oh.
You already got me.
Okay, I can't. Everybody keeps moving when somebody goes off. Everybody moves. So, is everybody had a moment to say hello, other than our meeting tech geek Chris? He's just gonna thumbs up. Awesome. Okay. Well, he's got the hard job today. So, all right. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. And the first thing I want to do is, if you all had a chance to look at the agenda, make sure there's no changes you want or need to add to the agenda. Everybody good?
Lisa, I would like to not have us vote on the trail standards today. I'm happy to have a robust discussion, but Tillamook County has not had a chance to go through those with our planning folks and others. It's just been a short timeline over the holidays. So happy to have a discussion, but would prefer not to vote.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did update the agenda, but Lisa, I may not have sent you that updated agenda. We had talked about it at our foundation meeting of hopefully voting on the signage policy, which is really important for everyone here. And then at a future date, as soon as Sarah's had a chance to provide her comments on the minimum trail standards, we can come back and hopefully vote on that.
That's easy. Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and say the agenda is approved. How about the minutes? Did you all have a chance to look at the minutes from, I think they were November meeting? Anybody have concerns, questions, corrections? Can I get thumbs ups? Okay. All right, I see at least 5. I'm good. Okay, so minutes are approved. And so Cheryl, since you are here with us, would you be willing to go ahead and do the review of our insurance policy?
Sure, I can do that for you. So I guess I should let you know at least kind of what my background is in insurance. Hudson Insurance has been operating in Oregon since the early 1800s. And I personally have been part of it since 97, not since the 1800s, but since 97. And we specialize in, or the thing that I primarily specialize in, is public entities and nonprofits. So I've been working and writing the insurance for STIA since it needed it originally in 2019. And then we added insurance, separate insurance for the foundation in 2020. So what I can do is just kind of go through and met with some of the board for the foundation a couple of months ago, and we talked just briefly about what different coverages you have. So I could go through and kind of do the same thing, and you can interrupt me with any questions, or you can ask questions at the end. Currently, the foundation is insured through a company called the Alliance for Nonprofits for Insurance. And basically, it's a risk retention group that specializes in writing nothing but 501c3 nonprofits. So the benefit of that is that they are geared only towards nonprofits. They specialize in them, so they are able to manuscript their policies to really meet the needs of the various nonprofits that they write. Right now, you have a general liability policy with a 1 million per occurrence limit and a 2 million aggregate limit. That's basically your slip, trip, and fall coverage. That's where if anything were to happen on the trail, you get sued for some sort of bodily injury or property damage. That's where this policy would come into play. In December, and on that policy, something important to note is that your volunteers are actually included. There's a medical payment limit of $20,000 on that policy for your volunteers. And that's not standard in a commercial general liability policy. That is something that's unique to the company that you're insured with. And it's one of the things that I mentioned they're able to do. They're able to add that in because they understand that typically nonprofits have a volunteer exposure. So on your standard general liability policy, any company who carries that, who has a volunteer that gets injured, they would actually have to sue the organization to have any coverage under it. In your case, if somebody's out working on the trail and they get injured, you can send them to the hospital, you can cover their medical bills, you can take care of them up to that $20,000 limit before you would ever have to tap into the general liability limit on your policy. So that's a benefit of being insured through this carrier. In December, we went ahead and added an umbrella liability policy at the request of the board to increase your per occurrence limit from 1 million to 2 million. So they felt that was necessary. Salmonberry Trail, that the IGA has a higher limit than that. So we had a discussion surrounding why there's a difference in the limits, and they made the decision to go ahead and increase it to 2 million at that time. You also carry a directors and officers policy, which is where all of your protection for the board members, the decisions you make as board members, comes from. And in December, we added coverage for employment practices liability. And the reason for that is obviously the foundation does have an employee now. But even if you didn't have employees, any coverage for even a volunteer who comes back and says that there's been wrongful termination, harassment, discrimination of any kind, any third-party claim like that from a volunteer would fall under that employment practices liability. So at any point in the future, if you decided, you no longer had employees, as long as you have volunteers, you still have that exposure. So we now have that coverage in place as well. And really, that's just the brief explanation of what you have. And I'd like just to open it up to you guys for questions.
Thank you. Anybody have questions?
And Cheryl, that was the Salmonberry Trail Foundation, right? It just went through.
Correct.
Can you briefly go through the special district insurance that STIA has?
Sure. So STIA has basically the same kind of coverage. It's just that because of the way they're organized under the statutes, they have access to a company called Special Districts, which Michelle is very familiar with. Well, obviously Bill is too. It's an insurance pool in Oregon that writes only special districts or IGAs of this type. Because they have access to it, they are actually able to get a higher limit of liability. They have the minimum that special districts will write is 5 million. So they carry a $5 million limit of liability. And that's what really opened that discussion with the board a couple of months ago about why there was a difference in the liability limits. Typically, an insurance pool like special districts is able to offer coverages at a much more discounted rate than your standard insurance markets. So even though the Alliance for Nonprofits offers good rates for nonprofits, it's still not as competitive as special districts. But unfortunately, the foundation doesn't qualify for that coverage because it's not set up in the same way. Special districts can't legally insure a 501c3. So They carry the $5 million limit of liability, and that also covers over all of their public officials, employment practices, all of the same types of coverages that you have.
Thank you. And Lisa, if I may, I just wanted to sort of clarify. So for example, if STIA was hosting a guided hike for members or partners and something occurred on a STIA hosted guided hike or, exploration onto the trail, that would be covered under STIA's general liability insurance. Is that right? Versus if it was a foundation sponsored hike where the foundation was taking out volunteers or community partners or the media and something happened, that would be covered under the foundation's liability insurance.
That's correct, technically. It just is a matter of who the person decides to sue or file a claim against. So in most cases, we usually see that they'll do a blanket approach or a shotgun approach, and they'll name everybody in it. So in those situations, it would come down to doing the investigative work to see who was actually hosting it, who was actually the responsible party, what took place, to be able to tender the claim to the other party. And so that is also that is the reason why you need to have your own separate coverages, because you never know when you're going to be named in a lawsuit.
Dave, I see your hand up.
Thank you. And I'm in a hotel lobby, so I hope it's not noisy. So I've got actually two questions. The first is, the insurance we're reviewing right now is for this moment in time and for the near end for both the foundation work we're doing, and then actually when actual trail use begins, hopefully we have to be talking about a different form of coverage. Is that correct?
It is correct. At that point in time, we would still be able to maintain coverage through the Alliance for Nonprofits. We would just need to be looking at changing the class codes on the policy. And that brings up another thing. We did go through, and when I talked to the board in October or November, whenever it was, I did let them know that your volunteer work that you have going on right now, the use of power tools, the different things that you send people out there to do, is covered underneath it is encompassed in the class codes that we currently have. So you would be able to keep the same carrier. We just need to make the change to let them know that it's an open, active, recreational trail.
Yeah. And then my second question is, I think it's a little bit more when we actually get into trail operation. One of the topics that I'm actually meeting Oregon tourism contacts here, and one of the things I'm hearing about, I believe it's called that a lot of the communities with trails, I think it's a non-immunity for
recreational
public use.
Immunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Recreational immunity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that recreational immunity obviously was a defense that public entities had under the law, that they could just automatically have a lawsuit dismissed by using that as their defense. And so what's happened to it right now is that it's still there. It can still be used as a defense. It's just that it can't automatically get it dismissed from the get-go. The entity still has to defend themselves and prove that they weren't liable. And that's why, like, for instance, Tillamook County and everybody in the state has had to go through and either close trails that they don't have the funds to repair well enough to make them, viable options for people to utilize, or make repairs and put up the signs saying the trail is to be used at your own risk. All of that has taken place recently because of the loss of recreational immunity. So it won't really impact the foundation or STIA, in that it's still there to be used as a defense. The only way it would impact is if they ever change that and they make it to where you have that recreational immunity in place from the get-go. Does that answer your question?
And Mike, did you take your hand down? Yes. JR, go ahead.
Yeah, Cheryl, does 1 million and 2 million, does that match the current tort liability limits for Oregon? I know they're different for the state versus other entities, but just wondering, is that coverage match those tort limits?
Well, so the STIA has enough coverage to protect them over and above the tort caps. The foundation, with the 1 million per occurrence limit, did not, but those tort caps don't apply to the foundation as a nonprofit. So that was also one of the reasons why we just decided that it would be important to add that umbrella coverage so that you have a 2 million per occurrence limit, which is what I always recommend to all of my public entities right now, because I think for counties and cities, the tort cap is at like 1.6, something just above that. So I always recommend having a minimum of at least a $2 million per occurrence limit. And so that's what we just increased this to. I did find at the time, JR, just so that you have this information as well, that at this stage, the company is not willing to offer a higher limit than the 2 million. And their reasoning for that is basically exposure. They feel like a $2 million limit, you have that on your policy right now. There's a lot of people out there that are going to want to be using the trail. They may potentially find reasons. And I know this is terrible to say, and I hate sounding like the big black cloud, but there are reasons why people would look to sue. And one of those reasons is when they see limits like $5 million on a policy. So that was kind of their reasoning right now. They'd like to just see how this progresses, see how things go before they would consider raising it more than the 2 million.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions for Cheryl? No?
Wait.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, Lisa, I didn't want to interrupt that on, but maybe more for Dave or some of the other groups. If we do open the trail or pieces we open, we might need to adjust our insurance, like we mentioned, but I think also the trail partner that takes on the operations and maintenance, they would also have their own liability policy. And so, and the minimum trail requirements that we'll look at later today specify that as one of the requirements they would have to have. I'm sure then we'd meet with Cheryl and make sure that the trail partner and STF and STIA all have the appropriate insurance levels.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, just because you will really want to make sure that they not only have the correct or the proper insurance levels, you'll want to make sure that it's in your contract that they are providing you, STIA, whoever the parties are, with an additional insured endorsement that's actually in the policy that states that you are protected by them for their operations. So that's standard. You know, you want to be added as an additional insured to their policy, and you want proof of that on an annual basis from them.
Excellent. And our minimum trail requirements are not very specific. We say that trail partner, at least right now, Michael Newser will correct me if I'm wrong, but it says they have to have a liability policy. And what that actually is, we would flesh out and get closer to it with an expert like yourself to make sure we got the language up to date for whatever year that is. So.
And I can definitely help you with that. I can definitely provide some boilerplate language and some limit recommendations. And then obviously the legal side of it, I can't do so. You'd want to have that proved.
Yep, perfect. We just want everyone the trail partners to recognize that's part of the deal if they want to open a section of the Stanbury Trail for us.
And at that point, we'll end up all bringing in our various attorneys and figuring out exactly what that will look like. Okay, any other questions for Cheryl? Nope. Okay. Well, Cheryl, thanks for making time for us and making that so easy to understand, because that was not always the case. So we appreciate your experience and your ability to help navigate us and really helping get the foundation and STIA in the right place, because I'm not sure we were exactly where we needed to be. So we're learning on every little step of the way along this trail. So thank you.
Absolutely. And just remember that I'm here. You pretty much all know how to reach me. I think I've dealt with just about every one of you individually, with the exception of a few before. So you know where I'm at. I did want to mention, and this is something the board can talk about. We don't have to have it in this setting right now, but one of the things that I noticed that the foundation doesn't have that STIA does have is crime coverage. And that really is where you're going to protect your funds. And it's not necessarily just from, in the past, it used to be a bond that you would purchase to protect yourself from embezzlement by an employee, but this is more current policies for crime cover things like social engineering or fraudulent activity on a computer. So an employee even accidentally, like a phishing email comes in and gives you different banking information, and that information gets put in and the money disappears. So that's something that the foundation might want to consider looking at some point in the future. It's the one area that I noticed that you don't have coverage that we can talk about whenever it's convenient for you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think we'll want to talk about that.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to jump off of here, but like I said, you know how to reach me.
Awesome. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Caroline, if you are ready, we'll go ahead and have you do a Salmonberry Trail Foundation project
You bet,
update.
you bet. So I'll try to keep this somewhat brief, but I think I'm just going to give a couple of the highlights. One, oh, Bill, you've got a kitten like behind you. Sorry, I just
No,
noticed
it's a
it
do-
crawling
it's a
out.
dog.
You're cute, or a little dog. So a big activity that's occurred this year is, of course, rail salvage in Washington County, and we hired A&K as a contractor to do rail salvage across about 8 miles in Washington County, and they have now pulled up all the rails and ties, and they have taken all the rails to their own storage location offsite, and they're in the process of picking up the ties from that area. So it was a really big, heavy lift for the foundation, and I want to thank Gavin and Michael and John, who really helped coordinate the work with A&K. And then also, kind of on the program front of the Samberry Trail Foundation, Michael, aside from working on the minimum trail standards and the signage, we have been doing a lot of work around our volunteer program and actually writing out and developing a volunteer program, which the board passed a volunteer policy this month for the Samberry Trail Foundation so that we could begin to actually make our programs official. This volunteer program has about 12 different teams that all have a different subject area that they're working on that we need advice and counsel and physical work on as we move forward to build the trail. So I won't go into all of those, but I'm happy to answer any questions about those during this meeting or at a later date. But that's super exciting that we have that program, which is almost ready to be set up and moving forward.
Caroline?
Yes.
As far as the crossings and the ties that were all taken out, I still need to get that list from you so we can update our FRA crossing list with the
Okay,
state.
thank you. I will get that list to you. Yes, the FRA updates. And then on our neighbors, so as we're working on this sort of 7 to 9 mile segment in Washington County, we've been having consistent meetings with some of the local landowners, our neighbors, and part of this was to develop a good neighbor program, as we want the Samberry to be good neighbors to our neighbors. And part of that is finding out what they need to feel safe and feel like they can be a cooperative neighbor in this project of building out the Salmonberry Trail. So a number of those folks from, which you thanked earlier, Lisa, really participated in the developing of that Good Neighbor program. That includes a Neighborhood Watch Adopt a Mile component with volunteers. It includes a dedicated phone number and email that landowners have or will have that they can use to call if they see something suspicious or if they have any questions. It also includes an additional signage policy for neighbors, as well as the opportunity for them to get support either with plantings for visual screenings between their property and the trail, or assistance with a no trespassing sign if they feel they need one for a particular area of their property. So that is not complete, but it's certainly moved a long way since our last meeting down at the coast. And then I think the most sort of exciting opportunity on the fundraising side is the work that we have done with Commissioner Scar. Thank you so much, Tillamook County and Commissioner Scar. And this is the federal government, Federal Department of Transportation opened up the RAISE grants just shortly ago, and we have an opportunity to work with Tillamook County to apply for up to $25 million for construction in Tillamook County of the Salmonberry Trail, and hopefully some connectors with local community projects along that Salmonberry Trail. This is a really big lift. It's a huge opportunity for the Salmonberry. It's a huge opportunity for Tillamook County and the communities along the trail. So Gavin, I just want to recognize Gavin because he is leading this effort of coordinating the application and writing the application. And all the partners in Tillamook County have been and are being reached out to ask for their support. And you all here today are also all going to be asked for letters of support. It'll be the first time that the foundation has applied for a raised grant, and we feel good about our chances. I also want to mention that we have applied for an Oregon State Parks and Recreation grant that I think is through the Department of Transportation. And this is a really key piece because this would help fund the trailhead in Washington County that is at some point in time will be built Fisher Road and Highway 47. It's that intersection. And this is a trailhead that can service both Stubbs Stewart State Park and the Salmonberry Trail. There's a connector right there off of Stubbs Stewart to Bumping Knots, which goes into Stubbs Stewart. It is a trail of Stubbs Stewart State Park. The trailhead will have, as is required by some of the planning documents, and I think it might be in the minimum trail standards, you know, the trailhead's going to have a bathroom and, you know, parking areas, interpretation, signage, and trash cans. So yeah, so and there are a number of other grants that we've applied for. Lisa, you mentioned the work with the City of Wheeler, who worked with us to apply for a grant with the Tillamook Coast Visitors Association, and that grant would help pay for 1,800 feet of trail being built in a demonstration partnership project right from the downtown of the City of Wheeler headed north to the edge of Botts Marsh, which we're also working with the Nehalem Community Land Trust there, and they own that land. And we're also working with Oregon Coast Scenic Railway as part of that grant, because we would also build a platform for the guests using the train right there to Wheeler. And then I think the other really just important update, I want to follow up sort of on Mike's question to Cheryl around recreational immunity. The Salmonberry Trail Foundation is a member of the Oregon Trails Coalition, and the Oregon Trails Coalition is lobbying the legislature to encourage the legislature to fix recreational immunity. So there's not this question about whether or not you know, local governments and frankly nonprofits potentially are going to close trails. And we've got a lobby day coming up in Salem on February 12th. And I know a number of the Salmonberry Trail supporters will be in Salem talking to legislators about a fix in the short session, because there are many folks that see this as an emergency situation for recreationalists. And then lastly, I want to say thank you to many of STIA's working group partners. So this is staff of our STIA members who have worked with Michael on both the signage policy and the minimum trail standards policy. So I just want to call out Jenna from Oregon State Parks. Thank you, Jenna Marmon. Michelle, you did a lot of work with the Port of Tillamook Bay. Mike Caffaretta, the Department of Forestry, and Sarah is soon going to be doing some of this work next week with us. So future thank you to Sarah, and I know Aaron, you did some work on it, and then also to CJ Doxey and Dami Valentine with the Washington County Planning Department. They've been super helpful for Michael. So those are my thanks, and just a brief report. Happy to answer any questions on those topics or anything else folks are curious about.
You guys are so quiet today. It was just so thorough, Carolyn. There's no way there's any questions, right? Great work.
Well, if you have a question about whether or not we're going out to do our volunteer work on Saturday, Gavin, is it true that it's been canceled due to the weather?
Oh,
it is looking like it is going to be canceled. That is, it's not official yet, but every indication points to it will be canceled.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
We'll reschedule for another date, and there'll be more opportunities for folks to participate in trail work on the trail. And also we've started a guided hike program. So we are doing guided hikes right now with staff and our training volunteers to lead those hikes in the future.
Carolyn, I was curious about that. What's the what has been the public return on that for you?
So the hikes are generally small. They're between 8 and 12 folks as we keep it limited. And generally the public people love it. I mean, generally every person that leaves signs up to be engaged in some way, shape, or form. It might be that they want to be involved in one of the teams that we're putting together. So we have a flora and fauna team, which is very popular. Folks want to become guided hikes, lead a guided hike. There are also connections that are made as we're talking about, well, we have a gravel team and we're trying to figure out what the best surface is for this environment or for this use. Folks will suggest people to talk to. So the public return, I would say, is extremely high. And they are not yet public hikes. And the reason is when we started, we had a few public hikes, but the numbers were so high and people were coming from like McMinnville to hike the Salmonberry, and we just don't have the resources to do that. So we're starting small.
Good plan. It's one of those that people haven't been able to do, so everybody wants to do it. John, I see a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Dave's question was a good segue into what I wanted to say here, and that is, and Caroline didn't mention this, but and she didn't ask me to say this, but I'm going to brag anyway. Our individual contributions in 2022 were about $10,000, and our contributions from individuals in the 2023 are over like $130,000, 12 to 13 times. And as exciting as that is, the number, just counting noses, the people that are contributing to Salmonberry Trail Foundation is up 6 times in 1 year. So those guided hikes, but all the other things that we're collectively doing, there's just a real movement building, and I just wanted to just publicly thank Caroline for leading that effort.
It's everybody. All we needed to do was open the door a little bit, and it's clearly this is a beloved project, which you all know, you've been involved since, many of you, the very, very beginning. And now that we've opened the door a little bit, there are ways for folks to support and get involved, and they certainly are stepping up to the plate.
Yeah,
it's really cute. Great to see it get contagious like that. So nice work, you guys. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think there are no questions for Caroline. Mike, why don't we jump right into the really riveting conversation around the upcoming STIA agreement. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that works on this, the signage trail, those pieces, they're not fun to work on behind the scenes, and everybody has, other jobs too. So I just want to say thank you for keeping us moving and going in the right direction here on a couple of these items. So Mike, if you will, that would be fantastic.
Sure, Lisa. And I do think this is really interesting, actually. So I appreciate the opportunity to have a short discussion about it with the group. So we are the Salmonberry Trail Intergovernmental Agency. And when I look on the screen, I see Michelle Bradley, and she and I probably can help remind what came before. But the reason to bring it up today is that it has a 10-year horizon. So in September of 2015, it was inked, and 10 years is a year and a half from now, September 23rd, 2025. And so there's a moment here. The purpose of putting it on the agenda item is to pause and think about what comes next. And does STIA continue just as it is and we just extend it out? Or is it a chance to evolve to whatever's better, what a better thing might look like? And certainly in the STIA agreement, that was contemplated. That just like we shifted from the Tillamook Forest Heritage Trust to the Salmonberry Trail Foundation, evolution in STIA is also very likely over time. I'm not sure if this is the right time or not, but I think it's worth pausing for a moment to think about that. And then how did we get to STIA? I think that's important because they did some really good work, and some of you may not be familiar with that. Now, prior to STIA, from 2012 to 2015, it was a partnership. And so there was a plan to implement a feasibility study. It was a memorandum of understanding between Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, Oregon Department of Forestry, the Port of Tillamook Bay, and Cycle Oregon. And so those were the signatories. Cycle Oregon donated the money, came up with the feasibility study. And that was accomplished. And then some of you have heard me tell the story of how we got the name Salmonberry Trail, but that actually was one of the things that made us come up with STIA, like who was going to be the decider and around a name. And that seems silly, but when you had sort of a coalition and a partnership with a much greater community, how to manage that, how to govern that was a real question. And so, but the leadership at the time engaged Oregon Solutions to establish a governance model. And they defined governance as sort of in short form, how to exercise management through policies. And so whose policies are they, and how do we manage a trail like this? And Oregon Solutions did a lot of really excellent work. And in your board packet, you have this document, which I'm just going to show the screen here. Options for a governance structure to guide the construction and operation of the Salmonberry Trail. And I bring it up because I've read it, reread it for this work, and I think it's still really germane. If they started out by looking at 27 Hall of Fame trails across the nation and looked at what were the governance models used for those trails. And so that those trails are summarized on page 2. I won't take you through all of them. I'll take you through some examples of the most common ways that people manage a complicated trail like ours. So there's about 4 models across those 27 trails that we're thinking about. And the first one is what most people stumble to right away, and that's a lead agency. And so an example of that for us is the Banks-Vernonia Trail. Oregon State Parks is the lead agency. Often it's paired with a friends group, some kind of a nonprofit, and they have that there, Friends of Stub Stewart. And so that's a model that's very common across the nation, whether that's a state agency or it could be 2 state agencies working together, some kind of a lead agency with a friends group. And I think Lisa can kind of correct me if I'm wrong here, but we didn't choose that because our state agencies weren't in a position to take on that work, that we have our own busy lives and funding models that support our current set of obligations and don't have space in that to take on this one. And so as appealing as that is in many ways, we aren't prepared to do that as the Department of Forestry, and we have our own trails or in Oregon State Parks. Okay, so that's one common model. Let's see. Another model that's used is called the special district model. And in some of my work with some of you on the screen, I know there are some real drawbacks to that, but it is used around the nation in various places. And Oregon law allows that, but you form a special district, you draw lines around it, you set up a tax base, and from that, you set up a board and the authority to do bonding authority, and you manage a trail. The Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District here in Washington County is an example of that, and the Fano Creek Trail is a trail that is managed under a special parks district. I know there's a wide range of pros and cons around that kind of model, but that's a model used nationwide. A third one that they found is used as the nonprofit model. So not a super common model. Nonprofits are more in a supporting role, but there are places around the nation where the nonprofits really are doing that work. And so I'm not going to say the name of this one because I don't know how to say it, but it's in Pennsylvania, and the Regional Trail Corporation, RTC, is a nonprofit, and their role is to acquire, develop, and manage trail corridors in Pennsylvania. There's also one in Georgia, and there's also one in Iowa. So that's a model. And boy, the foundation has done some terrific work lately. I think that's something that this group could think about. And then the fourth one, which is where we ended up, is the intergovernmental coalition model. And Oregon law provides what's called a 190 organization, and that's what STIA is. And we have other 190 organizations. We have a fire defense board that I work on, and it's a 190 organization. So it's where a group of public agencies use their authority to develop a new agency, essentially, and a board that directs it, and they deliver public services through that mechanism. And that's what we've done here with STIA. So if you read that report, you'll see those 4 models featured. And the other thing that probably is worth sort of thinking about is they divide up what kind of tasks, who does what tasks. And STIA really is set up around the leadership tasks. And so that's the overarching policies, and that's maintain the trail, having the trail rail banked, getting a lease in place. And I think that's sort of, for those of you who are new, that's the way STIA is set up. And then we would look to trail partners to do the management and operational tasks. And so STIA is not set up to be a management, it's not set up to be an operational. And that was a choice we made 10 years ago, or 8.5 years ago. And so we have that model now where we hold the lease, but we look to a trail partner to build a trail and manage it. And there's trail supporting tasks, and that's really generally the wheelhouse of a foundation. In our case, we've designated a lot of tasks to the foundation. Okay, so that's a sort of a short history of how we got to where we are and what's in that report, which I think is still valid. And the question is, where do we go from here? I've talked to some of you. Lisa, you and I have not spoken. We probably should have. But, I think we probably could just extend it automatically if we all thought that was the right thing to do. I'm not sure it is, but certainly that's an option that's out there. Another option that some of us have talked about is to re-engage Oregon Solutions. And Caroline has offered to maybe take the lead on that role, where we go back to Oregon Solutions and have them maybe refresh that report if there's anything that's changed, reach out to our community that cares, probably everybody here on the screen and more, and talk about what's working well and what could be improved, and then give us some recommendations about where to go from here. That's possibilities. And of course, we have to pay for that. We have to find a way to cover those costs. Or there's probably other options as well. And we have 1.5 years. So we do have a little bit of time to work on that. And so I think, the last thing I would say is that I think it's still all within our mission. Like all the groups that are here on the board, I look at Washington County and Tillamook County providing quality of life to your citizens. The trail is still, we think, doing that. For the Oregon Department of Forestry, we're trying to use our forest for Oregon's economy, for our livability, for our environment that still fits within that. OPRD, obviously, is still trying to provide recreation. Like a trail still feels like a good thing for all of the missions that we're all trying to push forward. The Port Tillamook Bay, financially benefiting our communities. So I think that was a real positive thing from the homework I did in advance of this. Okay, so that was the last piece I had, and I think we have to decide where to go from here. And we could really discuss that a little bit and think what we think is the right thing to do in the short term.
Thanks, Mike.
This is Bill, and I've got some comments.
All right, Dave, go ahead, and then Bill will have you go next.
And Bill probably has the same thought. So Mike, just as a subject matter expert, as far as next steps, and re-engaging Oregon Solutions, has there been any other different type of models that have come to practice? So, that we possibly could use. So re-engaging Oregon Solutions, where we just end up in the same, with the same options. So that's my first question is, like, if we re-engage them, are they going to tell us what we know? So is Oregon Solutions also, or a similar type of consultant, in the position to be more of a facilitator, which might sound like what we need to arrive to what the region and the regional partners want, to get to, versus, okay, these are the frameworks, but it sounds to me like we need like some sort of facilitating lead to get to consensus.
Yeah, so I think they provided that facilitating consensus work. They interviewed a wide variety of people that were interested and cared, and then worked with the leadership at the time to arrive at this model. So part of it was the homework of what is being done, what are the options out there. But the second half was holding our hands to get from what do we do to STIA. And so I do think, and there may be other groups that could do it too. In fact, I don't know if Amelia is still here. I guess not. That might be a role, for Oregon Solutions as well. I do agree with you. I do think we need that facilitator.
So Bill, I'll let you go, and then I'll chime in here.
Okay.
I know you're waiting, and I see Michelle getting anxious too. So
No, I've been on this board since its inception. I started 2010 and got on the port board for the trail. So I've been through the ups and downs and through the bureaucracy, because that's what STIA is. We're a big bureaucratic organization that's hard to get anything accomplished through. It takes time. We managed to fulfill our mission. We found out that we could build a trail, that it was feasible. We've got the lease done with the port. We've done what we set out to do. My personal view, and this is my personal view, is that it's time for us to look at assigning the lease to STF. It's just that time where they could take over and move forward. And that's not something that can happen in 6 months. It may take a year to do that. But we need to negotiate with the Port of Tillamook Bay to see if we can assign the lease to STF and make them the trail partner. Right now, we're becoming more of a roadblock to building this trail than is necessary. Trail standards, if you were a nonprofit, you could go through and have it done, but here we are going back to the county's legal, and then it's going to have to go to another county's legal, and then it ended up at DOJ. And because I've worked through these things time and again over 10 years, you can figure another 2 years on the trail standards. It's just the way we operate. And that's not a bad thing. We need to operate that way, and we needed that to get where we are. But at this point, STF is far more able to bend and find out what we need to do and make those decisions on the go. When you meet once every 3 months or 4 months, we're just sitting there in an ivory tower and not getting our hands dirty. So that's my input. If, it might be that we could get a facilitator in and see if this is the way to go, or start the negotiations and get the legal opinions of what we can and can't do. But I think we've fulfilled our mission, and I think we're starting to outlive what our life should be. It's just like an old guy like me. It's at a certain point, you've outlived your usefulness. And I think we're fast approaching that. So that's my 2 bits. I do think getting a facilitator in is extremely important. Finding out if STF would even want that responsibility, they would have to work through to see if it's something they would want. But I think now is the time to start addressing that. In another year and a half, I would hate to see us just say, okay, we'll go another 10 years the way we've gone. So that's my opinion. And it's strictly mine. It's not the port board's, but I figured after 14 years of this, I have a right to say what I think.
Well, and it's super helpful, Bill, because, someone who's been sitting here for, I think, 11 years now, right? Like we've had this conversation, and when we went into this whole STIA thing, it was so we could get things rail banked and we couldn't enter into a lease with the Port of Tillamook Bay, right? Like that was the intent. And we had a strategic conversation with somebody that Oregon Solutions brought to us. I can't even remember the guy's name now, remember? And the whole vision was we needed to move away from the Tillamook Forest Center and create a Salmonberry Trail Foundation and start moving everything to the foundation, because that model was the easiest model to actually be able to implement the trail. And so I would encourage us to consider creating a work group with somebody facilitating that has kind of a mind towards both of those models, and bringing back the pros and the cons, because I know as counties and states, it's hard not to be in control either, and what level of participation you will or won't have. But I think we need to really think about like, what is the best next piece for the trail itself, because I'm not sure that the structure that we have in STIA is the most appropriate for where we're heading. And I don't know what that looks like, but I also do know, I wish Amelia was still on, because I think that the Governor's Regional Solutions teams would be able to help us. I've also reached out to Jennifer Purcell, who used to be Regional Solutions for the North Coast. Her and Caroline and I are going to meet and just talk about other things that she might have seen. Jenna Marmon, who is on our team now, has some good ideas from some of the stuff that she did on the southern part of the state on the Bear Creek Trail. JR has some stuff from OCE. So I think there's some different different things we can talk about that are really good examples to point to that work in Oregon. Because I know a lot of the things we looked at, Mike, when Oregon Solutions were here, were like the Appalachian Trail and, you know, things that they're not Oregon and it's not the Oregon way. And so I think I'm not opposed to having another STIA agreement for 10 more years, but it needs to be modified. It needs to be updated. You know, we have had the baby, we've named the baby, which was the hardest thing. I mean, that whole naming thing was, but I think it's time to say, okay, so what do we want best for the future of this baby? And I'm not sure that where we currently are is the right piece. So I guess I'd be looking for board support to say, hey, let's get a work group with JR, Mike, Bill, Dave. I kind of heard a volunteer in you. And if we could grab Jenna and Michelle, I don't know if you want in there. I know that you can't stay out of the weeds, so I'm sure you want to jump in. But I think if a group of you could at least get together and kind of frame up some ideas, I'm certainly open to looking at Oregon Solutions. I do think there are some other folks that might be able to help facilitate that. And I hope I'm also going to reach out to Oregon Solutions and see if they have some ideas about who might be able to help facilitate. But I want us to help lead with some of the research, because I think there's some stuff that we missed and that might be really helpful to us now. So if you guys are good with that, if we could commit to maybe by mid-February having a work group created to start that. So Mike and JR, can I give you guys the lead on that to work with folks to put that together?
Yep, I think so. JR, are you good for that?
He's going to pawn it to Jenna, but that's okay. I can't see her face, so.
Exactly. No, I think it sounds great.
And Caroline offered to help with some leadership there too. So I don't know if that's where the right spot is, but.
I think that's the best spot, right? Because that way you can come together to talk about what works for the foundation, what works for STIA, and where, kind of like the insurance question, right? Like where do we need to be with both organizations to align to be able to actually get to development and implementation of the trail, and what gets in the way, and how do we navigate that? Okay, good.
Great. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Okay, any other discussion about STIA's future? Okay, let's see, what's next? Minimum trail standard discussion. This one will be good, Michael.
I was going to say, let's drop one level of management and get to some of the things that we're trying to do to coordinate STIA and STF and some of our goals and stuff. So I want to just spend a minute talking about what the minimum trail requirements document is and isn't, and point out where we got to with it. Historically, everybody is sort of focused on the trail that was envisioned by the planning documents that Parametrics put together for the different segments. And the reality is that nobody can afford those. So we are working to try and make it acceptable for STF to talk to trail partners or be a trail partner to build trail that is something smaller, cheaper, but still safe and still acceptable to STIA and to any other governmental agencies. So this document for the minimum trail requirements is really trying to pin down in a vague sort of way, because there are 10 million things that aren't known at this point about all different sections of the trail, but make it possible to have a conversation about, for instance, a rail bed trail, which is a trail that the rails are still there and you're just basically walking between the rails, and maybe we do some gravel work to allow you to walk down the middle of the trail or the rails, but that's not a 10-foot wide hard surface trail that was envisioned. The idea is that we would start with that. Over time, as money and resources come pouring in, we can upgrade that trail to whatever we can technically do in that area. There are some chunks where that's the only trail that's really possible. There are other places where we can do much better than that. So again, this document is not a detailed minimum trail standard that I think it's very easy to begin to think about that. But this is not that. This is a discussion about what is the cheapest, easiest kind of trail that STIA could accept. So we put this I put this document together initially, and we got the working group together. And I also will second the thank you for everybody that's been working on that working group, because it's difficult to figure out what to do with the requirement to have somebody review this in the big organizations, and I understand that. And they did everybody who was on that group did a good job of going and ferreting out who needed to be talked to and what's going on. I also want to back up and say that we did not complete the process in Tillamook County of reviewing this. So we are just discussing this at this point. And we won't approve it because we haven't finished, like I said, that discussion. The document suffered some fairly serious reworking, because there was a lot of good input from particularly the counties, and also well, everybody had input. And so we're on revision 7 of that document at the moment. I think all of you have that document. There's a little bit of preamble, and then there's a whole section on the trail partner agreement. So STIA cannot build trail, so they need a partner to build the trail. And that partner might be a regulatory agency, it might be or a public entity, and it might be STF or some other nonprofit. But there are things that are going to have to be in place. And this list of trail partner agreements, and I'll just go ahead and share my screen here so that we can see this. In case you haven't spent an hour looking at it, hopefully you all can now see the trail partner agreement and some of the things that we put in there. I'm not going to go through this line by line, but there are some things in here. I'll just highlight this. Trail partners must show proof of sufficient liability insurance. We just talked about that. So that's one aspect of it. There has to be a fiscal plan to be able to operate the trail long term and so forth. So we're trying to get the framework built for a trail partner agreement. And this is not an academic exercise, because STF is actively working on, that chunk of trail, the 7.2 miles between Banks and the Williams Creek Trestle. And somewhere in the next couple of years, we want to turn that into a trail. So the next thing we need to do is start trying to write a trail partner agreement between ourselves and STIA. And so if we don't have these guidelines, we don't even know where to start. So that was the gist, or one of the primary goals for driving this document. Then there are things that all trail segments need to have. Then this is really the sort of thing that defines what the minimum trail can be. It needs to meet health and safety standards. Yes, of course. It needs to have restrooms, facilities. Yes, of course. We're not in this document attempting to say what those restroom facilities are, only that there be some and that it be sufficient for the expected use. Next question is, how do you define expected use? Yeah, we'll get to that too, because nobody knows. And so on. And then there were 3 basic types of trail that were discussed. Rail with trail, where you have the railroad, and this applies to the coast. You have a railroad operating and then a trail associated with it. Again, not necessarily a 10-foot wide trail. We came up with a minimum of 36 inches and hopefully a little bit wider than that, but as being an acceptable trail that we can talk about building that without, as a first starting point. And then there's the rail bed backcountry trail path, which was anticipated by the planning documents. That's just reality in the canyon section. You're not going to harvest or salvage the rail. You're not going to bring heavy equipment in. So the only you really can do is build a hand-built trail. And then, as we're seeing in the section that we've salvaged, you get a completely different answer when you salvage the rail. You get a pretty wide structure pretty quickly out of this. And so we can have a minimum of an 8-foot wide trail, but we had lots of discussion about what that gravel trail as a minimum point needs to look like. So that's really the gist of it there. I'll stop sharing here and open it up to any discussion, good or bad. And as I said, we will be bringing this back to STIA either at the next meeting or on an online vote at some point in the nearer future, as soon as we get finished with our input. Dave?
Great work, Michael. Thank you. I think it's important. So one of the hyper things that I'm hearing about a lot in tourism and with trails and things of that sort, and I'm sure Lisa hears about this all the time too, is trail accessibility, ADA requirements and things of that sort. And I think you've touched on it with that one line. I think even as a working document, I think there should be some acknowledgement that that is something that the project will be working for, to be a fully accessible trail for all differently abled folks. But I think that it's probably going to be important in the plan that acknowledging that this is kind of like a may not be that originally or something of that sort. I'm just thinking it's important, one, that we're working towards an accessible trail, and also if there is potential criticism from other communities that are interested in the trail, that we've talked about it. So I think it's there, but I just thought it was important to just mention that.
Absolutely, agreed. And I will go back over it and look at it and see whether that's been addressed. I think we made an attempt at it. Let's put it that way. Other inputs or thoughts?
I appreciate that, Dave. That's one of our 4 key goals, right? Is access for multiple users. And we struggled how to put that in this document. And we ended up with the goal for protecting the environment the same way as asking the trail partner to describe how they would meet those goals. And it gives us all a chance to talk about that and decide if that meets our needs or not as a starting point. And you're probably right. We could flesh it out and say on the way to the full development where we have the most access we can get. So.
JR?
Sorry, JR, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think to Dave's point, I think one of the things when you're especially doing a conversion of such a long run, I think it's important to acknowledge. So it's not currently accessible, and maybe it's some statements of saying, as when we add new facilities, those new facilities will be accessible. Everything else is in a state of transition, and really calling that out, because as you start to do surface upgrades, one of the lessons learned down on the OC&E trail when I managed down there, it's like 100-mile stretch of rail to trail. They focus so much on making an accessible surface upgrade on one of the sections, and what they did is they came in and they overlaid the ideal trail surface over the ballast, and they did it all at once. And the first spring, because horses went in there, they completely chewed it up because it had a lot of silt and clay in it. And so even surface upgrades need to be done in layers so they can pack in, because when you do it all at once, it's almost counterproductive because it's too thick of clay and it doesn't sink into the ballast like it's supposed to. And so saying, hey, this is a transitional plan. And so thinner but multiple surface upgrades are far more effective than saying we're going to transition this 10-mile section and it's perfect. And it's like, oh no, it didn't end up that way. So even just stressing new facilities will be built accessibly, but everything else is in a state of transition. But here's our, what our goals are is a fully accessible trail. But it's the surfaces are going to be the most challenging thing to upgrade to be accessible, because it's very hard to make that, especially when it's a multi-use trail, because what's friendly for feet is not friendly necessarily for hooves or even bikes.
Sounds like you may have identified yourself as an expert witness for this.
Trial.
Yeah. Michelle?
All right. I always have a comment, but actually if we could meet offline, there's just a couple of things that piqued my interest in here. I just wanted to make sure overall that we weren't stepping on the Port STIA lease for certain things, because there's at least one thing that seems a little contradictory in here. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well.
I will get in touch with you.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? No?
Looks like
Okay,
we're
well,
good. We want to go into the signage standard discussion, so we
yes.
can have that one too.
So similar way, I want to go back and look at what this document is and what it is not. So we have a tremendous amount of unopened trail. It's in various states of disrepair and so forth. Some of it is under construction, meaning we've salvaged some stuff, but none of it is open. And we did got some legal input on liability that STF and by implication STIA and then also Port of Tillamook Bay and everybody has on this unopened chunk of trail. And so we wrote a liability signage requirement, and it's just called liability signage because there's really, that is the goal, is to tell people that they are not okay to walk on this trail at this point, and here's why, and it's dangerous. And so the idea is that I came up with the core idea of where to put signs and so forth. And we wrote this up as a policy or as a document. We are currently implementing this as best we can on particularly the chunk of trail that has been salvaged, because that suddenly starts looking like a one-lane road. And lots of things can happen on that. So we have had to put up fences. We have had to put up no trespassing signs. We put up danger signs, basically in line with this document. And we're doing that because we know we need to do it. And we came to STIA and STIA's partners and their legal teams to see if we had any holes in that policy. There was some input, but in general, it withstood the test of review much better than the other document. There was nowhere near the same level of rewriting. And we can also say that it is possible to do this policy. We have done most of the segments of it. So that's another good sign. Sometimes you write something and you try to do it and it doesn't work out so good. So we're trying to do that. So I don't want to go over the details of it, except that there's a lot of no trespassing signs and a lot of danger signs and rules when we put them and where we put them. And I think this is something that is pretty straightforward for STIA to adopt, because it's better than what we have, which was essentially nothing. And we need to get it. We need to get this stuff out in the field. Any questions or comments on all of that? Dave.
Because I got a big mouth. Hey, this is a really exciting project. And so there's what we have to do legally to protect the foundation and the port and all those type of folks. I'm just wondering, as food for thought, are we missing the opportunity with signage implementation to champion, engage, and inform folks about the possibility of what's happening? So feedback, what we hear currently, people go up the timber, they want to go out on the bridge, they see the no trespassing signs, they don't understand why, and things of that sort, because we have legal postings. It might be worth us thinking about telling the story at the same time as an adjunct to what we have to legally do. So when someone's seeing it, like, oh, I can't go there, but we might have some wayfinding storytelling type of complement design signs that may help support the project instead of that no feeling. And
absolutely. There are a whole bunch of us who are quite opposed to having all of these no trespassing signs, but it was pretty clear when we talked to lawyers that we need those. And this is not part of this policy, but we definitely intend to have signs on there or stickers on some of this that you can hold your cell phone on where there is cell phone coverage, and get the rest of the story as to what's going on with this trail, so that it's not just a read the hand. The rest of the story is told. I can't say that that's been implemented yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I'll just follow up on that the intention is that there is a no and a yes at the same time. So that's what folks will feel. And we definitely want to be able to capture everybody who is, potentially trespassing to become a supporter of the trail and be engaged. in making it a reality.
Any other questions for Michael? No. Nicely
I would
done.
just
Pretty
toss
soon
in there
it will always be done.
as the recreational immunity piece rolls through and we discover where that lands, there may be a need to revisit. That was the words of wisdom from our attorney, was just we need to make sure that this doesn't just get filed on a shelf and say we're all good, because we know this is a very fluid environment that we're all hoping for the best to come from.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that this is for the closed part of the trail. We haven't even started on the discussion of what this looks like for an open part of the trail, which is going to be a lot more gnarly.
But keeping those signs on the closed part will help with that other.
Exactly. Yes, good point.
Not open, stay out. Okay, are there any other questions for Michael? No? Well, thank you. Great job. Okay, so now we are at the spot in the agenda where we're going to take a break because we were together, but I'm gonna ask us to keep going and see if somebody can help me to see if we had anybody who had asked to provide public comment, because I'd like to, if we end up having time, we do have the ability to go into an executive session. So I want to go ahead, Caroline.
I think we want to take a vote on this. On the liability signage policy, and that will allow the foundation, under the agreement of doing the work for STIA, to go out and finish applying this standard to.
So we didn't need to wait for Tillamook on this one, only on the trail standards.
Tillamook is already.
Sorry. Okay, perfect. So then, yes, then I'm looking for thumbs up to say that you guys are in agreement with what Michael just proposed on the liability signage standard and adoption, understanding that it will need to be fluid to keep up with recreational immunity or any other type of liability issues that may surface. Good. Is everyone good? Thumbs up? Thumbs down? Everybody's good. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that, Caroline. Okay, and then do we know if we have anybody who is signed up to provide public comment? My meeting tech geek, has anybody reached to
People
you?
should be
And
able,
asked?
people who are attendees can't talk right now, but they should be able to raise their hands if they would like to. If you're in the attendee group, raise your hand and we'll enable your speech.
So we'll go ahead and open for public comment if there's anyone who would like to provide that.
I do feel like picking somebody at random and allowing them to talk and put them on the spot. Won't do that. Okay.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to adjourn the actual public meeting, and thank you all for making the time and being so flexible. Dave, thank you for joining us from, I think you probably at a conference or somewhere else too. So thank you for that. So I'm going to adjourn and then I'm going to move us into an executive session. So you have to bear with me for a minute because I'm going to need to read. Gavin, was that a hand, Gavin? No? Okay. All right. So the public meeting is adjourned, and as provided by Oregon Revised Statute 192.6602E, this body is permitted to hold an executive session to conduct deliberations with person designated by STIA to negotiate real property transactions. Executive sessions are closed to the public, and all attendees except those designated by the voting members will now be asked to leave the meeting, and members of the media are permitted to stay and observe the executive session, but no permitted report, but are not permitted to report only on the general subject matter being discussed, but not any specifics. No final actions or decisions are to be made in executive session, and no other subject matter may be discussed. We are now in executive session until we adjourn. Got it, Chris?
Pause here for great. Thank you. I'm going to pause here for a second. People who are attendees, you can jump. I'm going to wait about 30 seconds and then manually remove anybody who's still there in case you're not at your computer. Carolyn and Lisa, I need to know if everybody who's here on the panelist group, if they're all staying. If they're leaving, leave on your own. Otherwise, we'll kick you on our own. Oh, look, somebody jumped. That was Gavin.
Nobody jumps.
Okay.